Some distinguished folks in the room. Chairman of Djibouti Data Centers here, the chairman of SECOM is here, the CEO of Liquid in South Africa is here, but also a member of the losing golf team, which I myself was part of that losing team on Sunday. Yeah. As everybody can tell, Klaus has announced himself in the back. Growing up, I'm sure Klaus always sat in the back of the room in class, because if he was in the front, the teacher would probably have a long day and get very tired. In Sweden, when Klaus was a little kid growing up, I'm sure that must have been fun, Klaus, being a little kid growing up in Sweden for everybody around. But in all seriousness, we appreciate everyone coming. It's good to see the team from OSI, Julian, good to see friendly faces. Ranjit, thank you for coming. I know you're doing some work from Ethiopia down. And the purpose of the data gathering meeting is to really present the cable to the global wholesale community. Angola Cables has had tremendous success in the last 4+ years. We've seen a tremendous evolution and growth happen from the team really started from its infancy in terms of really starting out their international vision and expansion. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in the room today is the Chief Executive Officer of Angola Cables, the vision and leadership and the growth that's happened with WAX, with Monet, with SACS, with Ango-IX, with Angonet, the data center. Mr. Antonio Nunes, if you could please give him a round of applause. So without further ado, just some housekeeping items. We will have this presentation available, a soft copy for anybody that would like one. Just feel free to contact us, to email us. There's also a video stream for folks that are unable to attend. So for example, Klaus, no doubt Byron is sound asleep, cuddled up in bed.
That would be my background.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well. So if Byron wants to watch this on your Emirates flight home in front of the bus, you guys can watch that on your iPads.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Klaus. But in all seriousness, if anybody has to go early, we completely understand. There's an 8 o'clock meeting schedule that many of you may have, and you may not be able to stay the full duration of the presentation. Feel free to ask any questions after the speaker is presented from Angola Cables or Ocean Specialists, as well as offline. We have the room here till about 9 a.m. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker that we've been working with for the last 2.5 years plus. Very good friend and colleague. We work extensively with Artur Mendes. Artur is a engineering/computer science graduate from the most prestigious technical college in all of Portugal, and a 12-year industry veteran from Nokia. Artur is the Chief Commercial Officer of Angola Cables and is really going to give us a run-through of the network and exactly what's going on and how it's changing the telecom landscape. So please welcome Artur Mendes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Eric. You are in a good mood today, even if the African team lost. And it was part of the African team.
Yes.
No, thank you. I'll try to be very quick and speak a bit about our strategy and the full look of the Angola Cables projects. And then Perry and David will give some more detailed information in terms of the SACS and Monet, the two biggest projects that we are doing. For me, essentially, I put almost everything on one slide. And this is the full idea where we are thinking about the strategy, and I call it normally paradigm shift of subsea cables because of the major announcement that we are making, that is SACS, South Atlantic Cable System, the first ever submarine cable made on South Hemisphere, connecting Africa to Latin America that you could hear. So this is the difference. I was joking yesterday night because I had, I don't know, more than 10 meetings yesterday, and in most of the meetings where we see the cable map of the companies, that part is always missing, of So most of the people have the connections on the north hemisphere. It was the previous connected and developed world. The places with more cables, more than 15 cables, then started to develop the connections to Asia. But there's still no connected points between all the parts of the world. And we are trying to contribute to that by making this connection. And of course, the main focus is to try to not only to collect all the traffic from Africa, west and east side, but also, as we presented here, not well represented by the cables, but the several options that are today trying also to bring some traffic from Middle East and Asia, also on a new south route. And why we think this is important? Because when we look to the regions in the world with the biggest development at this stage, we know clearly that this is Asia, Middle East and Asia, it's Africa, and Latin America. So why keep insisting in trying to connect it on the north hemisphere when the developed parts are on the south part of the world? So that's why we are trying really to work and to create what I call a south hemisphere route to try to give a new direction to the cable and shifting a bit the paradigm that we are working on. In terms of projects, so we are aware we have walks connecting South Africa to UK that is more than 2 years activity now, that suffered a recent upgrade, so it's plenty of capacity there. Then there's SACS that are already told, and then money from Santos to Fortaleza and up to Miami, that my colleagues will speak later on. Of course, then there's two good connections points for us, as we have Angola or home base, but we also have now Angola Cables Brazil in Brazil, so we are trying to connect these points in a strong way. We have data center in both parts that I will show you quickly, 2 slides of it, because we really would like to push also for the contents and for the contents traffic on this new route. Trying to increase the connectivity to Africa and also decreasing the latencies of CN's approach to Africa and to African users. Because normally people don't look to Africa, I say, on a serious way, but if we look to the numbers of Africa, Africa is the second biggest continent in the world in terms of population. It's more than 1 billion people in Africa now. And half of that, or more than half of that population is less than 25 years. So it's a very young population that wants to enjoy the benefits of using internet and having access to all the contents that are now available. And it's one of the fastest growing areas in the world. So there's a place that, as African, I always say it's a place to invest. As I told you, so in Angola we have Angola is our data center in Rwanda. We are proud to say that it's the place with the biggest interconnectivity in Angola. All the operators are there, the national operators, but also some regional and international operators that are connected there with their own space there. The data center is almost full, and is the place, of course, where we could access also the full mesh of cables of Angola Cables as the interconnection from the CLES to the data center also belongs to us, and we will be able to interconnect. Then let me show you a bit of what we expected to do in Fortaleza. As you could see, it's a nice design and a good investment that we want to make there. We believe that Fortaleza deserved it to have it. They have 7 submarine cables connected there, plus 6 cables under construction at this stage. So really would like to have a good midpoint so that we could then share our traffic and bring the traffic, as I told you, from Middle East, from Africa, to interconnect with all Latin America and also North America. So it's the place where we want. Just to finalize, I want to speak about Angola IXP, we call it Angonix, the Internet Exchange Point of Angola. We just commemorated the first year now, mid of March this year. We are proud to announce that we are already in the 3rd place in terms of peak traffic in Africa, only beaten by South Africa and Nigeria at this stage. We have made peak traffic in January of 4.5 gigabytes traffic, and in average traffic we are already number 2 of Africa. And only with the 1 year activity, all the other ones have 4, 5, 6, 7, the bigger, the oldest one I believe have more than 10 years in Africa. So I believe we have something that we are also working on in having the local traffic to be exchanged locally and to increase the capacities of exchanging that. We have already 12 active members. It's all for my part.
Are there any questions for Artur at this time that anybody has in the open setting, or you can feel free to ask Artur offline later. Julian?
Artur, you showed the connection to Asia and the opportunity that's there. I've also worked on other projects that looked at that opportunity, so I was just wondering, I mean, maybe in terms of percentage of the east-west traffic, how much do you think you could see going around Africa?
It's a good question. We are not worried in terms of stock capacity. I say that if we are able to get 1 or 2% of the traffic that goes at this stage, will be enough to make that route a good option. And in terms of latency, all the studies that we run, in most of the cases, the Middle East to interconnect with Latin America is the best latency route.
The key takeaway message from the South Atlantic Cable System, and we've delivered this presentation in Honolulu, we had this presentation in New York, was given in Bangkok in Southeast Asia, is that the South Atlantic Cable System is contract in force. There were some slight delays, but if all of you leave this morning and you're still waking up or having your coffee, remember that the key takeaway is that SACS is contract in force. It is a go. It's happening. So you look at Monet, the Brazil-Florida cable being contract in force and well on track, well underway. You look at WAX, which has been in service for a few years, and Angola Cables is selling aggressively. Now SACS being contract in force. The pieces of the puzzle, the foundation, the fundamental building blocks are coming together. The growth in AngoNap, the data center, I believe AngoNap, the co-location facility, is almost sold out. So there's plans. Poor Fabio is going to have to go sell more co-location. But there are plans for a second data center for co-location and hosting. And the growth of internet exchange, IX traffic being over 4 gigs with Akamai, with Cloudflare, with Google, supporting the egress has shown tremendous growth in Angola as well as surrounding countries like Namibia and what have you within West Africa. So, Julian, good question. Before we introduce our next speaker, are there any other questions for Artur in terms of the South Atlantic Cable or any of the topology that was given here today? Our good friend from Verizon? Yes?
Used to be.
Used to be, okay. Hold on, just hold on. Let me get you the mic, just hold on.
Yeah, I noticed on the map you showed a cross Africa route. I mean, there's been many discussions about starts and stops and pieces and parts. Can you provide an update on the status of the cross-continent route itself?
please.
I see something interesting that I would like to work on, and there's some developments made. In terms of Angola, we are only missing a small portion of it near the border, more or less 100 kilometers. And Zambia is also developing on their side because they're also missing less than 100 kilometers. The rest Tanzania is all done, and a great part of the Zambia is already done. So when these two pieces that are under construction finalize, we'll have that interconnection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Klaus, any questions? You're okay back there?
I'm good.
All right, eggs are okay? All right, good. Okay, then let's introduce our next speaker from Ocean Specialists. Very pleased to have Perry Wright. Perry is a distinguished submarine cable expert with 25, 30, 35, sorry, 30 years plus of experience. Perry's a graduate in physics in the United Kingdom from University of Essex for his undergraduate, his first degree, and his second degree as a postgraduate from the University of Strathclyde, which I'm going to go back to my mulligan because I can't pronounce that. But no, in all seriousness, please welcome Perry. And Perry, thank you.
Good morning all. I'd like to start by thanking Arthur for stealing my thunder and showing that great presentation on the Fortaleza landing station. It's not just a data center. As Arthur mentioned, and as Eric specifically made great point of mention, SACS is contract in force. We've had the initial meetings with the supplier NEC, and construction work, or they're planning for it, and procurement is underway. I'm very pleased to actually be the project manager for this system, given that it will be the first cable system across the South Atlantic. And I'm not sure what I'm going to find on the way across, but I think it's going to be an interesting ride as we go. As Arthur mentioned, we have two landing stations. It's a very simple system. We're coming out of Sangano in Angola, which is an existing station where WAX lands. We are going to be landing at Fortaleza at the new data center and landing station, which is adjacent to the landing station for the Monet cable. The system is a 4-5 pair system, 40 terabits, 100 waves, 100 gigawave. That's the initial capacity. I suspect we'll be doing upgrades before we get to the end of the construction, if Arthur continues to sell the late investment. As I said, supplier selection has actually been concluded over 2 years ago, when we signed initial contracts with NEC. The intervening time was in the financing range that Eric mentioned earlier. But with all of that now taken care of, pretty much on schedule at our final planned date, we were able to go into contract in force at the end of March, and we've been actively working this as a live project for the last 7 weeks. NEC is contracted with a Tier 1 installer, so we're actually looking at quite a large installation vessel. We intend to lay this cable in a single load. So I believe we're planning coming out of Sangano later to Brazil, if memory serves me right. As Arthur has mentioned, we're building a brand new data center in Fortaleza. I don't have his snazzy presentation on the data center, just a couple of pictures I stole from him for it. But construction on this is well in hand. I'm seeing good plans of work that interface with the dates we need to land the cable in Fortaleza. So at the moment, given Angola Cables' experience of permitting in Brazil, and particularly permitting for this site, which they've owned the land for the site for some time now, there is a very good control over the construction work, and it should not pose any delays on landing the cable in Brazil. The Sangano station is actually a beautiful station, given that for the longest time it's only had the one cable coming in there, but if any of you ever get a reason to go to Luanda, and I suspect Arthur will be very happy to host any of you that want to come over there, take an opportunity to go down to the station. It's actually in a very nice area. I can personally guarantee that the local lobsters are really good. But it's a great place to land cable. And in particular, it works very well for SACS because they had the foresight when they built the wax system to build the cable station and the OSP route out to a size that was able to land multiple cables. So we have to do no terrestrial construction at all in Sangano to land the SACS cable. We'll bring the cable onto the beach, and from there on in, the ductwork is already in place, and there's plenty of space and power in the wax landing station, sorry, the Sangano landing station for the SACS cable. As I said, and we're going to keep reiterating, we are contracting force. The picture here with Tokyo-san in the front from NEC, who's worked diligently with us over the last few years bringing this system together, and with Tom Soja obviously prevalent in the back. We were able to have a very, very good kickoff meeting a few weeks ago in Luanda. It was very nice to have NEC bring their whole team into Luanda to meet with the whole of the Angola Cable organisation for 3 days of very, very efficient and effective meetings to really get this project underway. A couple of key points. As most of you are probably aware, it's important to have government support in Angola for work being done, and SACS is fully supported and endorsed by the Angolan government, which we also see as having great support for us with any permitting work. The good news, as I've said, because we already have the landing station, there's a limited amount of permitting work that will be required for Angola. The SACS program underway at the end of March is a 24-month program. So if everything stays to plan, at the moment there's no reason why it shouldn't. We should be ready to load the middle of 2017 with a planned RFS date for the middle of 2018. With any luck, we may actually beat those dates. And that's it. Any questions? No. I'll be around for a while afterwards, so if anybody wants to seek me out, please come find me.
Thank you very much. So I think so far we're running on time, which is a good thing. But I think it's important we acknowledge that some folks have just joined us in the room. Garai, good morning. Bon dia.
Good morning, bon dia.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Feel free to grab some coffee, Garai.
Thank you.
As always, good to see you. Our next speaker, promotion specialist from OSI, is going to be discussing the Monet system. Monet is a network between Brazil and Florida, and that's a very high-level description. Mr. David Willoughby is the program manager for the Monet cable. Dave is a graduate of Purdue University, fairly close to here. There's graduate work in the state of Indiana. I have the pleasure of living in the same hometown as Dave, so I see Dave frequently. Dave and I are fairly good friends. We've worked together for over a decade, and no better man to talk about the technicalities of Monet than Mr. Dave Willoughby. Give him a big hand.
Good morning, folks. My name is Dave Willoughby, and I've had the pleasure of working on the Monet system for 3 years now. So it's a great project. I'm happy to speak about it. The cable system itself is 3 landing points connecting Boca Raton, Florida, Fortaleza, and Santos in Brazil. It's approximately 10,500 kilometers. It's a 6-fiber pair cable system, of which Angola Cables owns 2 fiber pairs. We have both express and weekly capabilities. Angola Cables, the 2 fiber pairs we have, one is a full fiber pair drops in Fortaleza from Boca Raton and Santos. That's a 120 wave design. It's a full 100 gigabit system. The other fiber pair, we have a OADM filter, which allows us to have express as well as drop, express being Santos to Boca Raton. The summary of the project itself, we have a turnkey cable system supply contract with TD Subcom. We're organized in purchasing the system as a group of purchasers, which are Angola Cables, Google, APTelecom, and Antel. The project is being managed by an expert group, which is synonymous with a commercial and a procurement group structure that's managing the day-to-day operations of the supply contract with the supplier as well as with the purchaser group itself, building out its responsibilities. And the expert group reports to an executive council. The executive council is staffed by executive members of each of the purchasers group and is decision-making body for the expert group. The status of the contract, signed with Subcom as of October of 2014, and in parallel with that, we have a joint build agreement with the other purchasers of the project that define, how we work together to complete this system. The cable landing station activities, these are construction activities, are actively underway. The marine survey is complete. Cable and wet plant manufacturing is taking place. Presently, more than 50% of the wet plant is complete. The marine installation program has commenced. The marine installation program is 2 main-lay ship loads and a pre-laid shore-end program, both of which are underway as we speak. We're targeting to complete construction at the end of 2016, and Angola Cables is looking to be in commercial service in 2017. And this last slide, summarizes where we are with the 2 new portions of the Angola Cables networks, SACS and Monet, connecting into what we already have with WAX, and our plans to connect on. That is a quick overview of Monet. I'm happy to take questions now.
Any questions that anyone has in an open setting for David on the Brazil-Florida cable Monet? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? If anybody has any questions offline, Dave and Perry will be available to, and very happy to field any questions you have that you may now want to ask in an open setting, such as interconnections, landing stations, how things are going to go, ODF to ODF, for example. There's more detail and granularity that you're required. In terms of the formal agenda, we've effectively completed that. There has been some folks that have entered the room later. I saw the gentleman standing up there is from Neutrona. We have some other folks that just came in that I recognize from the golf outing on Sunday. But in all seriousness, that does conclude the formal aspect of the presentation. We've reserved about 10 minutes for Q&A. Are there any other larger questions that anybody has in terms of the network, the South Atlantic, AngoNAP, AngoIX, anything in general that anybody would like to raise? No? Okay. So again, I think the key points to emphasize is that SACS is contract in force. So feel free to propagate that message when you leave here. Tell folks that the system is contract in force because it is in fact contract in force. Monet is well underway. AngoNAP is effectively sold out, and there's a second data center that's being looked at in Rwanda to support the demand that's being seen locally. And the AngoIX ranking, as Archer mentioned, for Angola Cables is 3rd so far in Africa in effectively only 12, 13 months. So we've seen tremendous IP transit growth and egress savings in West Africa with the team, Darwin and Fabio, are working really quite hard. We do have a, if I'm not mistaken, a raffle. So the folks that have not dropped their name cards, their business cards into the the silver bucket as you came in is being walked around the room. Class, I'm not sure if you're eligible. You can't put 5 cards in.
I only did 2 this time.
No, it's so. But if anybody has not put their card in, feel free to do so at this time. Okay. Hey, you work for Angola Cables. I don't think you can. This is Chicago. We know how things work here. But, so, no, Janine's sarcastic. Okay, so we're gonna call Jamie from OSI to come down. Give Jamie a big hand. Jamie's going to pick out the winning raffle, and if I'm not mistaken, the prize is an Apple Watch.
Yep, right here.
Right here, Apple Watch. So you can make sure you're at the gym doing your Fitbit/Apple Watch push-ups, super burpees, and the winner is drum roll.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, let me. So, we have a winner here, based in London, from Hutchison Global Communications, from HGC. The pronunciation of the surname is Okorodura.
Oh, thank you.
That concludes the presentation. We're going to be putting up the larger slides for SACS and Monet from the initial part of the presentation. If you missed that, we have the room for another hour, about 50 minutes to an hour. Feel free to enjoy the food, coffee, and just business networking. Once again, thank you all for coming. Have a great ITW and safe travels home. Hi.